Good morning and welcome to the Town Hall Summit, day 2. We had an amazing day yesterday. I hope that you were able to join us, but if you're joining us for the first time, welcome to day 2. I'm really excited about today, especially my first panel with some wonderful people that I've come to know over the years, who are amazing founders and CEOs. And as I was thinking about this, as we were kind of developing the content for the Town Hall Day 2, I thought about how important it is when we think about the entirety of the business spectrum to acknowledge the work of founders and CEOs during this crisis and the unique challenges that they're presented with. So without further ado, you will have seen their bio bullet points in the video just a moment ago. I am going to introduce them, however. They need no introduction, but I'm going to introduce them. You can go and read their fuller bio on the website, the www.thetownhallsummit.com. But let's get started. So I'd first like to introduce Lisa Coker. Hi, Lisa. Welcome to the Town Hall Summit. Lisa is the founder and CEO of Infinite Management Solutions in the great city of Dayton, Ohio. Lisa is an Air Force veteran. Thank you for your service. She was named in the Dayton Business Journal as one of the top 40 under 40, a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt practitioner, to name a few. She is a wonderful leader, and I'm really excited to welcome you to the summit, Lisa. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, India.
Next, I have Farida Gibbs. Farida, I've known Farida for many years. I think I may have been amongst her first clients back when she founded this company that's had this amazing trajectory, Gibbs Hybrid. So Farida is the founder and CEO of Gibbs Hybrid, Europe's largest, let me say that again, Europe's largest minority woman-owned business, which is such a feat. I know it's amazing. Award-winning offices in the US, UK, and Europe. Watching the trajectory of this business, go and have a read of it if you haven't seen it. Welcome, Farida. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, India, for having me. And hi to all my panel colleagues too.
And next we have Mike O'Brien. Hi, Mike. Welcome to the Town Hall Summit. Mike is the founder and CEO of Opencast Software. He's sporting the beard for us all. We love it, Mike. Thank you for doing this and making us all. So welcome, Mike. I mean, Mike has been in his space for a very long time, and he had a previous business, which is actually where we met, with 800 staff and 14 global offices. Which was sold to Capgemini. He's an early stage investor in a number of different projects. But Opencast, one of the things I will talk about that is really interesting about Opencast and interesting about Mike and his businesses is they've been remote from the beginning. So this is something we'll pick up on. He's always had remote teams, and that was their business model. So I think a really interesting conversation to have. Welcome, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
No, thanks very much for having me. It's wonderful, thanks.
And then last but not least, we have Reggie Stevens, who is the CEO of Iris Solutions. Reggie is a tremendous leader. I've had the pleasure of getting to know him. Kind of watching him lead has been such a journey, and he has transformed the company that he actually acquired as opposed to founded, but he's founded it again. I mean, when I think about everything that's happened in that business, he's founded it again. It's a new company. Iris Solutions is a leading provider of technology solutions for healthcare providers in the southeastern U.S. One of the things that we'll talk about, and I won't kind of steal the thunder now, is that Reggie's a certified Amazon Web Services cloud practitioner, which is one of the things that he did early on to shift his business model. And I want to talk about kind of how that has helped perhaps during the crisis in terms of your ability to be able to respond to clients more quickly. Had you not. So we'll get into those things in a minute, but welcome to my wonderful panel. I'm India Gary Martin. If you don't know me already, I'm the founder of Leadership for Life, a multidisciplinary executive coaching, advisory, and consulting business. I have clients from around the world, particularly in the executive coaching space, but also my passion is bringing information to the public. And so I'm so glad that you're here to join us. We'll talk about a whole raft of things, but let's get started without further ado and move into the panel. I'm going to start with you, Reggie, and I kind of alluded to this in my intro. But since the time that you acquired Iris, you've introduced significant platform changes, particularly around the adoption of AWS, and you might need to kind of tell people what that is so that they understand it. But I want to talk about how that decision, as I kind of mentioned, helped or hindered your business during the, as the crisis has started. And can you kind of talk about the difference, what that would have meant had you not done that?
Sure, happy to. And before I get started, I also want to just say thank you so much for allowing me to participate on today's panel. And I also want to mention that we wouldn't have been able to do any of the things that we were able to accomplish had it not been for India. So big thank you to India Martin for both today and for all that she's done in helping us to kind of grow to the point that we're at today. So just to provide some additional context, I acquired Iris just over 2 years ago, and Iris is a much different company today than what I actually acquired. These changes were driven by a few key observations, and the first is I knew that in order to scale our business, we needed to embrace modern mobility and performance solutions. And I mean, just think of it this way. We're an IT company and most of our employees couldn't work from home because they didn't even have laptops. And if they had a computer at home, they would use a VPN to connect to the office network. And there's a whole host of issues with using VPN. So we had servers on racks, we had that weren't well architected, they weren't well protected from power outages, so we didn't really have resilient infrastructure in place. And the servers that we had were very laborious to maintain. And so I knew that we had to make a pivot infrastructurally and embrace mobility. The second thing, the second observation that I had when I initially arrived was we needed to increase our credibility and effectiveness with our customers. And in order to do that, we had to begin to adopt some of the same technologies that we would evangelize with our customers. In essence, we needed to begin to practice what we preached. And so those are the two key things that we really focused on almost immediately. I'm happy to say now that all of our employees now have laptops. We utilize multi-factor authentication across all of our business accounts and single sign-on, which improves user security. All of our infrastructure is within AWS, and AWS was a big part of helping us get to a more resilient infrastructure that's fault tolerant, secure, highly available, and all the things that come along with that. And if you're not aware of what AWS is, it's Amazon's cloud division. It stands for Amazon Web Services. And we have a number of other tools now that we've since introduced since my arrival that allow us to monitor employees remotely, track performance. We can do things like monitor what's actually going on your desktop real time. So user activity, which applications are open, how long has the machine been idle, at a very granular level. And that drives accountability. And so all of those things, fortunately, were in place prior to the shutdown occurring, and we didn't really miss a beat. I mean, we just kept going and kept delivering for our customers.
So just as a quick follow-up to that, because I do want to move through the panel, but what would it have meant had you not? Do you have, what kind of interruption to your business would you have been able to provide in the current environment if not? Right.
India, I shudder to think about what it would have meant if we didn't have that stuff in place. I've seen a number of our competitors, unfortunately, stumble. A few have gone out of business. Just in the last, 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, they were already faltering, and this was the knockout blow. That's for our competitors. For our customers, we've also seen certain customers, unfortunately, go under because their data wasn't sufficiently adequately protected, and it wasn't housed in an environment that was resilient. And we were in that same boat, not so long ago. So I know personally, firsthand what it looked like to go through that evolution. And I think that gives us a lot more credibility whenever we're talking with our customers now. So we would have had a much more difficult time. And had we made it, it would have been a very painful experience. So I don't even want to think about it.
I know you don't, and I'm sorry that I had to take you there, but we just had to know. I had to know. I mean, because I think that kind of, even though you didn't do it for that reason, it effectively has kind of ensured that your business can move forward. I think, I think we'll talk about this with the rest of you too, because the other issue, I think for all of you, is that, you're also dependent upon a client base that may have, kind of contracting capital, if it were, so I want to talk about that a little bit. But Farida, I'll move on to you. And please, if anybody wants to comment, please do. Farida, your business has had like a meteoric rise. And you also made some really interesting and prudent decisions, especially during the 2008 crisis, right? So I laugh, and I said this yesterday, but I've been through 4 crises now, right? So I was like, it was for me 9/11, then I lived in Asia during SARS for 2003, then I worked at Lehman Brothers in 2008, and now I'm going, now this, right? And you were a part, given that a number of your clients were in financial services as well, particularly around the 2008 frame, you made some really good decisions which kept your business afloat, and you kind of grew through that. And while everybody experiences ebb and flow, what are you experiencing now? And does it feel different than it did in the previous crisis for you and your business? Hold on one second. We're going to unmute you. Let's see. We can't hear you just this moment. No. We can't hear you this moment. Just give us 1 second. We'll make sure that we get the technical support on it so that we can. Okay. Let me come back in a second, Farida. I just want to make sure that we don't. I hold that thought because I know you have some good things to say, and smile. It's okay. We'll get there. Don't worry, Mike. I'll move on to you, Mike. Again, what's really interesting, and we talked about this previously, but both of your previous business, your business before and this one, have been built on remote operating models, which is really kind of fantastic and interesting, because I remember us having conversations, back in the early 2000s even, about how resistant customers were to wanting their teams to be remote. And what has that meant for you and your business? And kind of talk, can we kind of talk about that? I'm really interested to know what you're seeing now that folks have to be remote.
Yeah, it is really interesting because with the background in financial services in the previous business, everybody in FS was pretty much au fait with working remotely because their businesses work that way anyway. So we found when we started the new business, we diversified a bit. So we've kind of got clients in financial services still, but also in government. And in government, people have to work on client sites. And that's just the way it is for a variety of reasons. Some of them technological reasons, some of them cultural reasons, some security and so on. So what's been quite interesting when the crisis started, all the FS work just worked as normal. But in government, there was a big crunch on, basically trying to get thousands of people who don't normally work remotely. But I have to say, in the UK, it worked really well, actually. I think there's some glitches in some parts of government, but generally the departments we work for, the taxation and the benefits folks and the NHS, the big number crunching departments, big IT departments, and they were pretty swift at being able to move stuff out. And actually, people are seeing folks deliver faster. It's been fascinating, actually, seeing what's been happening. One of the issues we are seeing is there's a burnout potential, I think. how much time people are connected and so on. I think that's going to be interesting to see where that starts going as we go forward. But yeah, I've been blown away by the ability for the technology to cope as well. I'm not so sure a lot of us thought that, you know, Microsoft Teams and Zoom would actually work as well as they do when they're fully loaded, you know?
I'm fully loaded. I mean, I feel like we're like in this Zoom thing. I don't even know what to call it, but all I know is that like it requires so much more attention to be on a Zoom call these days, you know, and you have to focus, and reading the verbal cues, you know, people's verbal cues when you can see them in person, it's so different, and you have to pay such close attention. So the burnout potential, I think, is huge. And Lisa, you know, your teams are also remote. I mean, everybody's remote, but your team also really quickly transitioned to remote. What has that been like for you? And how have you seen the same kind of productivity that, you know, Mike has?
Yes, so Mike, I echo your comments to the T. So same thing, a lot of our clientele is United States government. And so typically in the government, you have pockets of people who work remote. And it's more or less on an ad hoc basis. It's rare that you'll find teams, entire teams that work fully remote. So this has been a new change, but it has been adopted by the senior leaders. And so anytime that there's a burning platform in the world of change management, anytime there's a burning platform, you can expect a lot of change. And so it's been nice to be right there alongside with our client base, kind of helping them manage that change. So we typically don't run into a pandemic, a burning platform of this magnitude, but it has been, like I said, really nice to be alongside the client and helping them come up with new innovative solutions. And so like India said, we are in a Zoom video conference world right now. I feel like that is our new normal. But it's been nice because while they told us to do social distancing, we like to say with our clients that we're doing physical distancing, but we're not getting rid of the social aspect. So we're leveraging technology to ensure that we still stay connected, because when it's a stressful environment, whether it's at home or you have sick, you know, family members being impacted by COVID, all types of stressors, it's nice to be able to get on a Zoom call and see your fellow teammates and see their smiling faces, even if it's for an hour. And the dogs barking and the cats meowing and the kids running in the background. So it's been a challenge, but in every challenge, there's always opportunities. There's always opportunities. And so as a CEO and founder, it's our job, to me, it's my job to make sure that we acknowledge the challenge, we acknowledge it, but we quickly pivot, brainstorm, and come up with opportunities and ways in which we can continue to serve our existing clients, but at an even higher level. So our productivity and innovation has soared. We're actually growing during this pandemic, which is a blessing in itself.
It is that. I mean, but that brings me on to my next question for you around being able to balance client demand and what they want, particularly as we start thinking about reopening, and your team safety when folks start wanting them to come back on site, if that's the case, right? So how do you think about that? How do you think about the balance around, you know, yes, we want our teams to be able to reintegrate and grow our business because people seeing us means business development, versus actually I want to keep my people safe and make sure they can do the work, and I don't want to put them in harm's way. How do you do that?
Absolutely. So India, to me, the key word is balance. So there's some words that have come up during this pandemic. One, pivot, quickly pivot, figure out what the customer needs, and provide solutions. Innovation, we're having to do things differently, but that brings opportunity to do things better. And then balance, because in our situation, our team has never fully like 100% remote, teleworked. So it's been interesting to me. The challenge is when you have a team of team players who do what they have to do to get the job done, It's a little different when you have to go on the client site from 8 to 5 versus you're at home with access to your laptop 24/7. And so in this environment where we're having to juggle a lot anyway with the kids at home, we're homeschooling them and walking the dog, we're learning to do a lot at the same time, which means that at 5 p.m., the laptops are not closing. The cell phones are not turned off. I'm getting emails at 9 o'clock, 10 p.m. And so balance is the key. Balance is going to be the key. And then bringing on the teammates, of course, the safety and well-being of my employees is first and foremost. We serve excellent clients. Seriously, I couldn't ask for better clients because they understand the state of, where we are. And they are doing it calculated. They are not rushing back on site. Nobody's rushing back on site. So they're taking the guidance from our governor. I'm in the state of Ohio. And so you may have seen Governor DeWine on the news, but so we're following, his lead, but we are cautious. And so as the owner of my company, I'm making sure that my team is safe, they're well, and we'll come back on site as needed, right? But we're not rushing. We're not the first wave or the second wave, just jumping in there. So, but our client base understands that, and they are very flexible, agile. So we're good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, I think the really interesting thing about that, and I think something that people can kind of take away and learn from this conversation, just as if I think thematically about some of the things you said, is you talked about your clients being excellent. And I've heard Reggie say similar things in the past, but that's also about being really good at stakeholder management, because clients aren't just excellent. We sometimes have to train them into excellence, right? We have to train them into a way of being. And I'm saying that in jest, but truthfully, it is about your ability to stakeholder manage people to get them to a point where you can kind of have those conversations and they understand where you are. So Farida, I'm going to come back to you. Do I have you on? Or do we have your voice? We don't have your voice yet? What's going on here? Oh my goodness. Oh, she's dropped. Okay, that's okay. We have plenty to talk about. And Farida will be back and we will get the answer. Somebody's trying to keep me from getting the answer to that question, but I will not be deterred. And I know that the team is working to get her back on the screen so I can get the answer to my very important question. One of the things that I would like to talk to you all about is what you're seeing. And I know that, Mike, for you particularly, it's slightly different because, you do have a lot of government clients and financial services is still kind of carrying on in a way, but and same for you to some extent, Lisa. So this might be for Reggie. Let's talk a little bit more about you starting to see clients kind of close down. And I think that's an important one, because I think for founders and CEOs and folks who are running businesses, I don't know how you insulate yourself against that. There's nothing that you can do, but let's explore that a little bit, because I think we want to talk about what that means for business and some strategies folks might want to think about in terms of how they work through that as it happens and the impact it could have on your business.
Right. It's so true. It's troubling to see any customer go out of business, but it's more troubling to see a customer go out of business due to an event like COVID. And, I don't think that there's a CEO out there or, a founder out there that doesn't have a deep appreciation for the grit that's required to build and sustain a business. And knowing that and seeing that in our customers, and knowing that, how painful it must be for them to have to go through just saying the words that, hey, we're closing our doors. I mean, it's really difficult. And so, what we did, which is probably a little bit different than some of my, other IT companies, is we just kind of dove in. And we said, look, whether you have the cash to pay us immediately or not, we want you to survive this. And, whether you take the perspective of, hey, let's just help because that's the right thing to do, or you take that perspective because it's in your self-interest, right? If your customers don't survive, you don't have customers after this is all said and done. whichever side you choose, it was just, we just thought that that was the prudent thing to do, and it was the right thing because it was the right thing to do. And our customers actually responded in kind in ways that were unimaginable. I have several customers that invited me to their practice. They closed it down, and we went in and we walked through their entire patient workflow because that had to change as a result of these onerous PPE requirements, right? So when you go to the dentist, it's not the same experience anymore. You got curbside check-in, you got, you can't enter an operatory without, scrubbing in and scrubbing out. And, that changes a number of things. It changes the unit economics for a patient visit because now you got to cover that PPE cost. It changes the number of patients that a single provider can see on a daily basis. And so there are a lot of things that changed, and we were right there, real time developing solutions that allowed them to kind of minimize the financial hit that these practices were taking as a result of this. And so, we now have a teledentistry solution. We're one of the only ones to have that. We offer telehealth solutions. And so, but all of that came out of just wanting to help, just diving in and wanting to help. And did we leave some money on the table? Maybe, but we got happy clients, and I'd rather have that, 10 times out of 10.
No, that is, I mean, you've said it there. And I think one of the things that we're experiencing is that, if you look around, the companies that are doing the best right now are the ones who are providing services for free. There's free everything right now. I mean, and I'm not saying free, I mean, that are augmenting and supporting people through this crisis, right? And so I was like, even with this kind of town hall summit, right? I was like, there's no way that we would charge people to do this. Folks need a place to go to be able to get good, solid, reliable information. And that's not something that you charge people for. You need, especially during a time like this, you need to be a resource to people so that they can do that. And if you're a business owner or you work in a company where you're responsible for continuing, business development, you have to make sure that your clients being happy and going that extra mile is, you do that. And what's really funny is that all of you were doing that before. So this would not be a new thing for you in terms of making your clients happy and going the extra mile. Some of you have said, do you really need to do all that? And you said yes. And look at where it's gotten you. If you listen to me, we don't know where you'd be. But thanks, Reggie, for the plug early on anyway, because I'll take it. But Verita, I'm going to come to you now. Do we have? Yay, we have you. Yay. Awesome.
Can you hear
me? We can hear you. We can. London calling. Thank you so much for being here. I'll ask you your question again, just to make sure. I'm sure you remember it. You have one of the biggest brains I know. But I was talking about the meteoric rise of your business. And that 2008 happened, and you rose through that. I mean, you grew through that amazingly. You're the largest woman-owned minority business in Europe. I mean, what is different now in this crisis than you experienced in the last one, and how is it impacting your business?
Yeah, thanks for that. There's one simple answer to that, and this crisis, I don't feel alone. I feel like everyone is in exactly the same position as I am. With the 2008 crisis, it affected mainly the financial services sector. So we were predominantly in the financial services sector. Not many businesses were in the same industry as I was that had such one particular large client where there was a huge impact. So in 2008 for us, it was one word really, diversification. So we had to diversify our portfolio, the sectors that we worked in. We looked at collaboration. We worked with collaborating with other women-owned businesses globally to come together, because 2008 was not about me. 2008 was about, how can I survive? What can we do to ensure that we grow, that we don't go under, that we manage our cash flow? And I was sat there watching my competitors doing really, really well, and you've got to stay on that level, because the minute you slide off that scale, nobody's going to remember you. So there was a lot of things, and India, you were pivotal to helping us understand the importance of scale. And scale was really, really important for us. So, you know, every time we bid for an opportunity, you know, oh, we can't service India, we can't do the US, we can't do mainland Europe because we are just so centric to a certain location. So that exponential growth for us was all about being able to scale and look credible for our clients. Today, in this crisis, it's not about that. It's about how do we survive? How do we ensure that our employee welfare is maintained? How do we? This is a game-changing crisis. This is not a crisis that we learn from and move on. The world is going to change. The way we work is changing. The way in which we communicate with each other is changing. The way in which we embrace each other is changing. But the most important thing that for me personally in this business today is the whole crisis management, the whole keeping the business stable, the realization of what we have entered. But I'm not on my own. Every single one of us are in it together. We're in the same boat, and you know, the sort of the human aspect has really come out, that people do really care about each other, that people have put their differences to one side in a way. And you know, and so for me it's that whole thing about people's welfare, their mental health. How are we going to bring people back into the workforce that have been out for several months? How do we ensure that people feel that they're going to be okay? Reassurance, you know, you're always having to manage people's reassure people, but at the same time you kind of you're bonding and you're becoming more closer to your customers. So because they're in the same boat, and so there's a synergy and there's a commonality in what we're all going through. So embracing and just being able to say to ourselves, look, I don't have the plan. We're still working on the plan. We still need to figure out, like, what are we going to do when we get back? What are the priorities? Is it technology? Is it people's welfare? Is it cash flow? You know, because at the moment, if the revenues are declining because the projects are not coming in, but you need to sustain your business, the revenue and the profit keeps you in business. But at the same time, it's not about profit, right? It's about being human and realizing that we are in a global crisis, and how do we come out of that? So that 2008 to 2020 to 2020, really the biggest realization for me is that we're just human. We're just human, and we're in it together, and we're trying to do something that no one has ever really experienced. But let's say that we do face another global pandemic in the future, I think that everybody will be far more better prepared and a lot more resilient to what they've had to face, basically. So it's been an interesting 15 years. Lots of crisis, but nothing to this scale. But in a way, I feel good has come out of it, not just the bad.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Farida, leave it to you to be the one with the, right, you know, to pull on the heartstrings. I'm like, where are my tissues? Producer, can you get me some tissues? But this is so true. You know, I mean, you are so, it is, you know, I think, you know, one of the things that this crisis is about is people. And you brought it right back to that. I mean, you brought it right. If you hadn't thought about that in this conversation, well, now you can't get it out of your mind, because it's about people. And our ability, you know, to run businesses is really only as good as our people, you know. And so, and I think you raised a really, really interesting point around the fact that we are really in this together, and everybody's experiencing it, which is very different. Right, because in previous crises, I mean, like when I was living in Asia in 2003, nobody outside of Asia was worried about SARS. I was petrified, right? And you know, people would always laugh, right? Because you typically see people from the Asian continent who will come over and wear masks. We started that, like I was doing that from like, I don't know when, right? So, and that's because I went through SARS in 2003. So people were like, why did people wear masks? Because they went through SARS in 2003 and other things, right? So it's really important that we remember the people part of this. And but speaking of people, which I think is a big thing. I mean, like, you know, Farida, we're talking about contract, like, you know, businesses that might contract and some of the challenges they have. But for like Mike, you are talking about the fact that, you know, because primarily, and this is a kind of preparedness thing, and maybe not necessarily because you were the all-seer, but because it was your business model, you know, you're seeing growth. But my question is, how do you hire people through this? I mean, because you're going to have to hire people.
Yeah.
How do you do that? And how do you know that the people are actually folks that you want to hire when you can't actually kind of see them in person and, you know, get those cues again, people's energy? There are a whole bunch of things when you're hiring. Talk about, can you tell me how you're going to hire people through this?
Yeah, I mean, we've hired 4 or 5 people already, but it is a challenge. The really difficult pieces are, you know, we just hired a head of recruitment, which is quite interesting, and that's a senior hire, and doing that on video was a whole different experience. You know, I think it was very difficult for some people who perhaps hadn't done much of that stuff in the past year in global businesses. So I think for me, it's that the senior roles are really, really tricky ones. You know, the ones where you would have liked to have had a cup of coffee with somebody and more of that kind of stuff around it in a more sort of lengthy process. And I think it's going to change that whole process going forward, you know, and how we do that. So yeah, the hiring it's really tricky, and we're going to see in the next sort of 6 months how that pans out. But we've managed to do it, and it's worked. But to your point, you know, that's going to get really interesting for a lot of businesses where, you know, they're used to hiring hundreds and hundreds of people, and, you know, where are the people? Where, you know, do you really know where they are? Do they exist? You know, I know we got to know each other where we were working in environments where a lot of people were working on the other side of the planet providing services. So, you know, I think that's going to be quite difficult, isn't it? And I'm sure there'll be some great innovation around, you know, kind of people being able to authenticate who they are. But you know, we were talking about this the other day, how that's gonna come on, and, you know, people are endlessly inventive, and, you know, new solutions will appear, but it'll be a thing that will worry a lot of people, won't it? In terms of, you know, if you're working in procurement and vendor management, you'll be asking people, how are you going to prove that people are where they are, and how many of them are there, and, you know, all these kind of good things. So you know, there's a lot of people are talking about it, which is a good thing. And, you know, I see things like this are really useful, so we can kind of share these concerns and then, you know, pick up afterwards with other people with different perspectives and so on. But the hiring works, but I think it is going to get challenging as we go forward, and the numbers of people increase, and there's going to be some other stuff that we won't have thought of that's going to pop out and amongst this. How are other people finding it? Is that are you guys all hiring at the moment?
Yeah, please, Farida, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to just say, so we've also hired as well, and we have the luxury of technology, whether it's Zoom, Skype, WebEx, Cisco, whatever you call it. The one thing I think that we have struggled with is being able to bring that person into the culture of the organization. So, you know, you can interview, you can screen, you can ask them, you can do the technical questioning, but the whole onboarding experience is probably the bit that I think will need the biggest piece of innovation. How do you onboard talent remotely into a culture? Because it's not the same when they come in and they meet the people and the teams, and you walk them through your business and they see the induction. And so that bit, I have to say, has been a very interesting journey for us. And you know, our team in Poland have just hired 15 people, for example. But again, how do you make them feel a Gibbs person? How do you make them feel I'm part of this dynamic company that is why should I work for you? Why should I not go and work for something else? So competing with the bigger brands, you know, because obviously we're not, you know, we're certainly, you know, we're a good firm to work for, but you're still competing with major competitors, and so you have to sort of embrace how you're going to bring them in and onboard them and give them the best onboarding experience that you possibly can.
So Farida, Brian, we did we did the same thing. We just hired 2 new members via Zoom. So from the beginning to the end of the process, but our orientation, we typically have on site. And that's where you get, you know, your shirt and your water bottle and you learn about the culture and the brand. And so now we're having to pivot to a virtual orientation. And so this is helpful, one, to make sure that over video, we do have to be a little extra, right? Because when we're face to face, yes, you can kind of see, you know, the excitement in my face. I'm talking about the company, but on video, if I'm not prepared, I'll come off dry and they'll be thinking, did I join the right company? Right, so now we're having to say, hey, welcome to the team. We're excited to have you. You know, we're over here extra animated, but they have to feel or sense our energy to be able to, like you said, want to be able to stay on with our companies, because they're not going to be face to face with their fellow teammates for a while anyway. So great point. And thanks, Marita, too. I'll probably be picking your brain a little later, maybe next week, to see how the orientation piece.
I think that, you know, that is, you know, that is so, the people piece of this, again, it just keeps emerging. I mean, through yesterday it emerged, today, I mean, it's the people piece is the thing, right? And I guess what that kind of brings me to, and this is a rapid fire question. You don't get to like use like a paragraph, so you have to answer this kind of quickly, because I wanted you to just tell me what you think it is. My question is, you know, given that, you know, especially as founders, CEOs, and you know, you have pressures that people who are CEOs in bigger companies don't, because they have a whole balance sheet behind them and a whole bunch of stuff that actually isn't their money, frankly, right? This is your money. These are your businesses. And so I'm going to ask you to give me one word, kind of rapid fire, around what you are concerned about with regard to your largest exposure. So what do you think your biggest exposure is? Rapid fire. I'm going to start with Reggie.
My biggest exposure is people.
People.
I think
okay.
One of the things that we didn't really quickly touch on is the opportunity that this creates. This is a hiring opportunity environment, right? There's a lot of hiring opportunities. Yeah, but people.
You use a
people,
sentence. You cheated. You used a sentence, but it's okay. Lisa.
I want to say remote workers. So people, but remote working environment.
Okay. Remote. Okay. Farida?
Financial stability. Just making sure that whilst the, you know, those numbers and those projections that we put in to our plan this year, we're not, clearly they're going to fall back a little bit. You know, just managing the cash and making sure that we are able to maintain a business and still remain sustainable and keep growing.
Absolutely. And Mike?
I think really it's a concern about when you're in a relationship and people business, where that's going to go in a year's time, when you've potentially got a blip in, you know, you're developing your pipeline of business and how that generally works. You know, a lot of us do it with, you know, networking and physically meeting people. So how that's going to pan out a year down the line when there's been this gap at the moment, and is that gap going to continue because we don't travel as much as we used to? So that's the thing that's gnawing away at my brain a bit at the moment, about what the normal on that's going to be.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What I can say is that there's a reason that you are all founders, because all of you are rule breakers and didn't do my one word question. But that's okay. I can take it. I'll take it. But what I'd like to do really quickly before we move into, we're going to move to questions in about 5 minutes, because I have another question for you, and let's see if you can follow instructions this time. But if you have questions, for those of you who are watching, there's a Q&A box. Please start to send us questions, and we'll get to those momentarily. But in the Q&A box, please not in the chat. I can see them by looking off to the side. It's because I see your questions popping up on the monitor as they come through. So please start sending through your questions. I know you probably have lots of them. I've already seen some things come through. But my next question, so before we go to that, is, and I know that some of you are like, sent me messages. I'm not going to say who. I'm going to leave you anonymous about why are you asking that question? How am I going to answer that? But I have to, so you just have to guess. And this one is, and you can get to use a sentence this time. So, you know, what advice, like today, would you give yourself if you knew what you, like, you know, from the start of this crisis, let's call it 8 weeks ago or 10 weeks ago, if you knew that it was going to be like this, what advice would you have given yourself? And I know that's a tough one, but I'm trying to pull out the learning for people, the kinds of things that you are now reflecting on that, gosh, had I known that, I would have done it. I would have probably done this if I'd known. So I'm going to start this time with Marita.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that question a lot. What would I do differently? What would I change? And I think what has impacted us or made our projects go on hold is our customers' inability to be able to do whatever they need to their end. Okay, so we do project work. Yeah, we supply talent and resources to our customers. So our world hasn't stopped. We can still do that. We can do that. The barrier is the client hasn't been able to do that or find a way. So if I had known that this was coming, then I think I would have been much better prepared, or prepared myself and the team and everybody to have a solution in place that would not stop that whole customer experience, and allowed it to, you know, having a solution for them to allow them to keep going as well.
Okay. I would say, Lisa, I'm going to go to you, and I have a second question for you that somebody has popped up that I'll just start weaving in. So why don't you answer that question first, then I'll go to the second one.
Okay, so the first thing I would say that has helped is we went into 2020 with a growth plan, a roadmap to scale, thanks to India. Most of those goals and objectives that we put in that 2020 roadmap helped us survive and ride this wave of this pandemic. We didn't know, but some of those things that we were putting in place actually is going to help us, you know, come out on the other side even better. So thanks, India. One thing I would say that I would have done differently is embrace technology. So my husband is an IT network operations person, and I think because I live with someone like that, it's just too much. But I can tell you, during this pandemic, I have been looking over saying, help, which tool do I use over here? So I would have embraced technology years ago. By embracing technology, it would have allowed me to hire remote talent. So in Atlanta, in New York, in London, high-skilled talent that's out here in the marketplace right now who's furloughed or looking for jobs. So I would say, because of this pandemic, I've opened my eyes to technology, and so I'm a fan. Reggie, I'll be calling you as well to learn more about AWS. But I am all things technology right now. I mean, so that's my one lesson learned: embrace technology.
Okay, and Lisa, and this is a really good, if you can give me like a 30-second answer to this. Someone asked how your Air Force experience helped you in developing your day-to-day business leadership and operations, like what the discipline around that.
Oh, it helped tremendously. So in the military, they teach us, you know, flexibility is the key to air power. Have we not learned to be flexible and agile during this pandemic? Also, it taught us to build structure, right? So chain of command, structure, flat organizations, building an organization of teams, empowering people to lead their teams. So the Air Force has taught so much. So I wouldn't be here without my time in the Air Force.
Awesome. Okay, so why don't I go to you, Reggie, in terms of and the original question, what would you tell yourself now if you had the information before around what was going to happen? What would you say, or what would you have done differently, or what would you prepare for?
So I would have applied the same approach that we applied for operational infrastructure and moving to kind of a cloud solution and really making those improvements that allowed us to scale to our sales and marketing. And we did a great job on the operations side. We didn't do that great of a job on the sales and marketing side. A lot of our sales and marketing is still inbound. It comes through our website, or we make the connection through referrals, which is great. I mean, we have happy customers, so we get a lot of great referrals. Or we did it in person at trade shows. There are no more trade shows right now, right? And so we are having to work double time to build out kind of our digital marketing apparatus. And that doesn't fall on anyone but me, right? I am now a HubSpot guru. I'm a Canva guru. I can design a lot of different things. None of them I suggest are great, but they're good enough. And but we're doing it quickly, and I think that there was a missed opportunity on that front, because none of us could have envisioned a world wherein we couldn't sell at a dental trade show or a medical trade show. And so that's what I would have done a little bit differently. Would have done that earlier.
So on that point, there's a question that came in for you, Reggie, which I think will be interesting. Is kind of every crisis comes with opportunities. What opportunities would you advise people to take advantage of right now to position them well going forward? And that's, you're kind of a very forward-thinking person. What's your thought about that?
What a great question. India, you know me. I'm a glass half full guy. I'm probably a glass 3/4 full guy. And so one of my board members recently said, never let a good crisis go to waste. He reminded me of that. And so, I mean, it's been said before, but he reminded me. And so, where are the opportunities? I think there's a hiring opportunity. This creates a hiring opportunity. This creates more opportunity to grab more market share. I alluded to other competitors going out of business. If they have weak balance sheets and they're unable to weather the storm, it's unfortunate, but it creates opportunity for those who have, balance sheets that allow them to be a bit more opportunistic and aggressive during this. And you shouldn't feel bad about that. That's part of being prepared and being kind of a strong competitor. It's having a strong balance sheet. I think that this also creates opportunities to. We experienced a lot of reticence within healthcare with respect to adopting new technologies. So we're big on cloud, we're big on security, we're big on mobility, and some of these arguments kind of land flat when you're talking with doctors that have a really strange experience or strange relationship with IT. They may not appreciate it the same way. And so this has created a new appreciation, a new experience, a new opportunity for them to experience IT in a different way. Doctors that had never used video conferencing are now using Zoom and Chime and others. And so we're seeing rampant interest in telehealth, whether it's in various healthcare modalities. So there's opportunity literally everywhere I look. And for our company, we're doubling down on business development, hiring, recruitment to really expand and do what many have referred to as accelerating out of the curve.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's perfect. I mean, that's as good advice as any. And Mike, I'm coming to you on your advice that you would give yourself. Is my laughing giving away the fact that you were the person? Just kidding. No, I'm just. No, but I was going to say, if you could think about that, but also somebody asked a really interesting question, and I wish I'd have thought to ask this one. And I'd like to ask you kind of as the last piece of advice. The question that I asked, but second, what's been your wow moment? What's been your big wow moment out of this? So those are my two.
I think that collaboration has just been unbelievable. And I think somebody else mentioned the way that people have responded has just been fantastic. You know, you just don't know what's going to happen really, because with other crises, various things have happened, you know, and maybe things haven't gone that way. But with this one, I think I've been astonished at the way everyone's pulled together, you know. And you know, especially here, the way the medical services and so on, people have been so supportive. All that, that's just been, yeah, it's just been fantastic. And you know, I think equally the way that you know, in a company, the way the employees have basically all pulled together as well and all helping each other out, and it's, yeah, that's just amazing. That's a bit of an obvious answer, right? But it is just kind of, that's been mind blowing really, how that's come across. Yeah.
It has,
And,
it really, really.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, you were laughing at me because I said, I don't want to come across as a smart aleck, because we're just fortunate in our business that we're a technology business, we work remotely, so we've got all those things in place. But you know, for one, I don't want to sound sort of cheesy about it, but we're doing a growth plan as well, and I sort of wish we'd done that earlier. And there's lots of interesting pieces in it. There's a kind of marketing piece in it, and like a lot of people, I guess, you sometimes leave that piece because you're in a relationship business, and now you've kind of got to be a lot sharper about how you're marketing the benefits of what you do to people, and you're not going to be able to, you know, run into people the way that you used to and develop business that way. So I think, you know, perhaps we would have got that program going earlier. But, you know, and I agree with Reggie as well. It's, you know, I feel chuffed that we did do it when we did it, because we're going to be in a better space, sort of moving into whatever comes next, you know. So yeah, I kind of wish I'd done that earlier.
If I can add to that sales and marketing piece just really quickly, because we're all in kind of relationship. Okay, we're in these relationship kind of service client businesses. And again, because I'm leveraging technology, these conferences, these video conferences, the webinars, the virtual conferences, we're plugging in as a team. And so we're chiming in, we're asking questions in the chat so that we can be seen as our company, and following up when they have those industry days and things like that. So plug into those different conferences and make yourself known, and follow up with the people who are out there briefing. It turns into business. And so we do what we have to do in this virtual kind of environment, but we found that to be helpful.
That is perfect. And on that note, we have hit the end. We could go on for hours with this group for sure. What I will say is I know there were a lot of questions coming through the chat. If you pose a question and we weren't able to answer it, you can go on to the website, and there is a tab that says submit questions, and we will get your questions fielded to specific folks if you'd like to get some answers to things. It's www.thetownhallsummit.com. I want to thank Lisa and Farida and Mike and Reggie for your time. It's been amazing to spend this time with you. You've really kind of given us such wonderful information and such great nuggets to think about. Following at 11:15 Eastern Standard Time, which is in 15 minutes, will be Purpose-Driven Leadership. Please tune in, and thank you all for joining us. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.